What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Here with my man Teddy on episode 5 of the Teddy and JD podcast.
Going on.
Chilling, man, chilling. We still in quarantine life. You know what I mean? They need to let me out.
They need to let all us out.
They need to let me out, bro. I'm ready. I'm ready to come out. But I think we got an exciting show for y'all today. It's a topic Teddy and I are very passionate about. Um, we did a breakdown, Bill Simmons' Book of Basketball 2.0 podcast with Steve Kerr um, on 25 years with the secret and why the Warriors couldn't keep it was the title. Um, Obviously a little background on Steve Kerr. He's pretty qualified to speak on this subject. He's an 8-time champ as a player and a coach, 3 with the Bulls, 2 with the Spurs, 3 with the Warriors. He became coach of the Warriors in 2014, and it just so happened that I followed the whole thing unfold game by game because, as you know, I'm a big Harrison Barnes fan and followed his career since he was in high school. And so I saw the first year Mark Jackson progress to Steve Kerr. And over the first 3 seasons, Kerr as a head coach went 207-39. That's the best mark ever of the first 3 years of anybody coaching. First rookie coach to win a chip since Pat Riley in '82, and he was the first coach in NBA history to lead his team to 67 or more wins in 3 consecutive seasons. So I guess he's qualified, right?
Absolutely. I mean, his background say he's that guy.
Yeah, I mean
But
that's unprecedented success. So uh, in this episode, was you and I when we first heard it was like, man, this was a great podcast. Listen to just some of the jewels he dropped on it. He talks a lot about the keys to winning, um, which basically is chemistry. We talked about winning titles with Jordan, Duncan, and the Spurs, Coach Pop, and winning the 3 titles with the Warriors, Steph and KD. We talked a lot about the journeys of each season, how each was different, but the different challenges that came with it, the joys, etc. Like his favorite moments, which I thought was really interesting too. And he discusses how and why he thought the Warriors, as we knew them with KD, that run, that particular dynasty came to an end after 5 seasons. So 3 topics that you and I we wanted to discuss because they do and how they kind of relate to our experiences playing professionally overseas. And we've each won a lot of championships, and so a lot of the stuff he was saying was interesting. We wanted to talk about the secret and how it ties to our experiences, the different leadership styles that Kerr talked about between Mike, Tim Duncan, and Steph Curry, and what's tougher, sweeter, whatever you want to say, winning the first chip, defending the chip, or trying to get it back after you lost it. So really can't wait to hear your viewpoints on that when we get to it. So let's get right to it. The secret, as Steve Kerr mentioned in the podcast, he says a team becoming better than the sum of its parts, which I thought was a huge quote to me. Bill Bradley had a couple quotes in there saying a team championship exposes the limits of self-reliance, selfishness, and irresponsibility. Success of the group assures the success of the individual, but not the other way around. I know you like that one when we talked about it. And one man alone can't make it happen. Actually, the contrary is true. One man alone can prevent it from happening. And I thought that was pretty powerful. Those came from a book, Life on the Run, from his time with the Knicks in the 70s. And real quick, and I'm going to let you talk, Teddy. Pertaining to this subject, Steve Kerr, during the Warriors run, he mentions how unselfish they were, how they were getting good shots every time down the court. Mixed with their talent, they created so many problems for the defense that they were unselfish, letting the ball go when it's supposed to. They were creating just wide open shots for themselves, which the talent mixed with that unselfishness amounted to them being very special, all time great special. Um, And they also had, he said, they had a lot of great cutters, screeners, passers, high IQ guys that knew how to play. Mixed with that, which was also a huge key, and that's something we're going to talk about too. And he talks about his favorite play was in when Katie was hurt in 17-18, the kind of play that describes how he thought was the model of how they wanted to play. KD was hurt at this time. Steph had 33 in the second half, and this was a great game. I remember it. He gets doubled off a pick and roll because he's so great, right? He's the catalyst to start it all. Hits Draymond. Draymond reads the rotation, hits Iggy on the baseline. He makes an extra pass. He probably could have forced it up, he said, but he makes an extra pass to Clay for a dagger three that pretty much sealed them going to the finals that year and ultimately winning back to back titles. Um, which I think that play sums up why the Warriors were so good too. Teddy, talk about what the quotes mean to you, or what they made you think about with your experiences, and also, talk about Steve Kerr's experiences with a few of the great teams you've been on.
When I think about it, all the quotes kind of, summarize what we want to talk about when we talk about chemistry, and that's unselfishness. I mean, in order to get to the highest peak of, in order to reach your peak as a team, to topple out how high you want to get on the how much chemistry you want to have, I think that's what it's going to take. It's going to take a certain amount of unselfishness in order to be a great team, because every player got to play a certain role, and certain roles got to be defined throughout the course of the season, etc. But in order for the team to come together and be great, if players not accepting them roles,
Right.
then that can't be built.
Right.
So for me, I think the what he said is spot on. For as like, you know, all those quotes are pretty much based off players being unselfish to a certain degree.
Right.
And if these players, if coming in, you can actually have players that come in and don't understand that, but as the time goes on, as the team starts to build, they buy into the system. If by the time the middle of the season hits, you got all your players buying into the system of
Right.
what kind of brand of basketball you want to play,
Right.
then I think that makes it. I think that's what makes for great chemistry. Players being able to accept the spot that they're in, and being great and a star in their own role, whatever
Starting their
that role
role.
is. I mean, whether it's you're the passer, the shooter, or whatever. If you about team first, it really is not going to matter.
Right.
I mean, if it's about the title in the end, you're gonna do whatever it takes. And
Right.
I think that's what he's talking about when he's talking about chemistry and the unselfishness of it. Sometimes a scorer got to be a passer in a certain moment. Sometimes a passer got to be a scorer. I mean, that's a part of what's going to determine whether or not you gonna win a title. So if players can, the faster you can get your team to realize this, I think the faster you'll be able to get to those big games and win them. So I think, far as that being the secret, again, they're spot on with what they're saying. I mean,
Right.
I agree with it 100%.
Right.
And talking about Kerr and his experiences of playing with coaching the greats, I mean, from playing with Jordan to playing with to coaching Steph Curry and Durant and playing with Tim Duncan. I mean, who's better to hear this kind of information from? I mean,
Yeah.
he's had it from both sides. So
Exactly.
for me, if you trying to learn, there's no better person to be receptive of. I mean, he played, he coached, and these players are just not typical players. These are some of the best players that ever played the game.
Right.
And not only that, at a certain point, they had to adjust their roles to the team.
Mm-hmm.
Even from when Durant came to Golden State, he had to change. He had to change a little bit in order to fit in with the group. And Steph Curry had to change his
Definitely
role in
too.
order for Durant to fit. That's
A two-time
if that's
MVP
not the
too.
epitome. Yeah, if that's not the epitome of great basketball in itself, then
Right.
I mean, I don't know what is. I mean, both of them took sacrifices in order for the team to reach another level. I
Right.
mean, again, Steph had already won it without Durant, but that doesn't mean when Durant came, he didn't want to win another championship. I
Right.
mean, the ultimate goal is to be able to hold
Win
that
the
ball
chip.
at the end of the season. So he adjusted his role and they conquered another title. So hats go off to the coaches, the players, because it ain't no easy task to do.
No,
I mean, it's
it's
tough.
not.
Every season's tough. So if you can hold that ball up at the end of the year, that's the reward to the grueling season of becoming, of building that chemistry and all those practices, long days of filming or whatever. So I think Steve Kerr done an exceptional job as a coach, and as far as how he was as a player, he played with one of the greats who was probably one of the toughest teammates to play with. So I mean, this is he did an awesome job. I mean, to me,
Right. Uh, what Kerr said about a team, the sum becoming greater than its parts, that like I said, that really resonated with me, because you were more of like a lead guy. You know what I mean? A creator, like balls put in your hands quite a bit. Ever since college, I learned very quickly, play your role and try to excel in it. See whatever that you can do on the court to help the team, whether it be rebound, defender, whatever you are, you're a shooter, and that's what I try to do. And that's part of, like you said, accepting your role. But I also think unselfishness is the ultimate key part of it, and I think that's all tied into it. Like accepting a role is being unselfish, because I ran into a lot of times over my career where it's like, people ain't willing to accept their role because, especially overseas, the motivation is like a lot of times you're on a year contract, right? So you want to get good numbers, you want to do this to get a contract the next year. But I think it's like a lot of times if you're on a good team and you're a major contributor on a good team, then that looks better than, like, say, if you're putting up great numbers on a team that's not winning at all. So um, I think that's the main part of it. He mentions how the types of shots they were getting, because they were so unselfish, and you have all time great talent like that, then you do get something special. You know what I mean? Because they're already like a guy like Kevin Durant. He could score on anybody anytime he wants. He could just raise up and shoot over a double team, whatever. But he's collapsing the defense and he's kicking it to people.
yeah,
And
making the right
nobody would
play.
say, yeah, nobody would say anything if he would force it on two, three people. But that's, to me, one of the biggest things I took from from all these quotes. And if you have a team with a lot of talent, with the mindset of, you know, I'm gonna figure out my role and I'm gonna play it to the best of my ability, like you said, star in your role, then you do. It's tough to do, like particularly when, like, overseas, like I said, guys are playing for contracts a lot. But in the NBA, sometimes it's not even about the money. Maybe somebody wants credit. We just seen, there's reports coming out in Ethan Strauss's new book that KD, there's a rift, between him and Steph because he thought like the fans were picking sides or whatnot. It could be little things that could derail that the secret, the chemistry that I think Steve Kerr is talking about, and it's not an easy thing. But when you have it and you experience it and you achieve it, there's nothing like it.
Yeah,
In my opinion, there's just nothing
great.
like it. So yeah, man. And I also think you could experience the secret without actually winning a championship. Like, for example, just throw out like a Pro A Germany or not Pro A Germany, Pro A France or whatever, very tough league you played in. If a team that's unexpected, that's not expected to do much, ends up having a great year and they finish top five or go to the semis in the playoffs in a league like that, or a team like in the NBA example would be OKC from this year. I think
Yeah,
they
you
had a
hold.
little bit of the secret going on. They were playing together, unexpectedly really good. I think they would have been a tough out in the first round or second round of the playoffs. So, there's levels to it.
Yeah,
OKC don't have a Kevin Durant or Steph Curry, but when you mix the two, man, you just get, like what the Warriors did. One of the best 5 year runs in NBA history, if not the best.
but
You know what I
also
mean?
one of the important things he talked about and that we slipping on is the type of players you bringing in. I
Right.
mean, because that's going to determine the type of attitude that certain players gonna have. Like you're saying, from year to year, from overseas, because contracts are from year to year. Players have a different mentality. Well, it's the same in the NBA if you look at it, because Them younger players,
Right.
their mentality is they trying to
Get
get that
paid.
next contract.
Yeah.
So that's why you got to have a balance of having vets and young players in order to mesh it out, because that makes it easier to mesh. Because older players, the more time you spend in the league, any league, the more it becomes about winning. The
Right.
older you get,
Right.
where you start to sacrifice money for rings. Like most winners, that's what they do. They like, I'll take a pay cut here and there if you're gonna put me in a better position to be a contender. Then
Exactly.
okay, I'll take that as a. So that means you need vets in order to. That's a part of the recipe for this chemistry we're talking about. And if you got all young players, then they gonna mostly. I mean, you might have a few of those guys who are young and who, some guys just come in as winners and they about that from day one.
Right.
Where other guys, they come in where, it's more about show and having fun and just getting numbers. So you got to have a balance of a certain type of players in order to actually make this, to make this recipe work.
Right. And at the end of the day, you got to have some sort of talent too. So
Yeah, of
particularly
course.
over here, again, like in our league, it's a lot of young guys are coming through, and most of them have a lot of talent. So as like you said, figuring out if the group could buy into the whole secret, as I keep calling it that. That's what Kerr and Bill Simmons were calling it. If you can get them to buy into that early, then your chances of winning big are better. The earlier the better, but it's not
Yeah,
always easy because, like I said, and I get it. You know what I mean? You trying to, especially young, they're trying to make a name for themselves or get money, but that's part of the business too. But if you achieve it, like I said, there's just nothing like it. There really is nothing like it. There's nothing more fun that I've experienced um, playing basketball when I'm playing on a team like that, and been lucky enough to play on a few. So moving on, um, Kerr talked about the different leadership styles he experienced uh, playing with Jordan, playing with Tim Duncan, and playing with or not playing with coaching Steph. And in it, he said Jordan had the idea that his competitiveness and greatness would will his team to where he wanted them to go. And if you weren't on board, basically, he would let you know about it. You know what I mean? And he said it was an interesting quote. He said he always felt he played for Jordan, but played with Tim. That's what he said, and I thought that was interesting. But he said Mike was the most dominant force on the court at all times. Obviously, we all know what Mike did, like offensively and defensively. The dude just impacted the game in so many ways. And he said, like in practice, he set the tone. The level was always very high. And back in those times, NBA players and teams still actually practice. From what I understand, like now, it's not really practice isn't really practice anymore. It's kind of more about preserving your body or whatever. But he would go at guys, talk trash to guys, and his philosophy was if you couldn't handle it there, you wouldn't be able to handle it in a game. Um, he said he made Kerr said Jordan made him better though through this pressure he put on him, which was interesting. And he said Mike was never scared to fail, which he thought was the key to his greatness. You know what I mean? Because he didn't matter. Like he was going to these situations with full confidence and let the results be what they be. And we all know how many game-winning shots and remarkable moments he had in those types of situations. So he said the Curry Duncan model was a little bit different. He said it's more. Bill Simmons mentioned says I'm the greatest teammate ever. Don't care about stats, just want to win. That's how he summed it up. Um, he did, like I said, he mentioned it was easier to play with Duncan than it was with Jordan, and he says both styles are equally effective, but obviously the key component is having players that great. They're in a position to be the type of leaders that they are, and the results came with this. So that's a big part of it too. Uh, I know you've been looked at as a leader on pretty much all the teams you've been on throughout your career. tell us, you know, different style. Which one you think is better? Which one you think is, you know, your experiences?
I mean, from my experience, like when I first came overseas, I played when I first got to Holland. I played for Amsterdam, and when I got there, they had two captains. They had Joe Spinks and Mario Ben. So for me, they had two totally different. One was, we had captain and co-captain, and they like Joe from North Carolina. He grew up in Jordan Harris. It's it's the way he led was exactly like Jordan. No different. Every day, 100%. He landed on the line. Practice was, you know, it was just like a game. Like
Right,
he went hard. He went hard, and Mario went hard too. But his approach to his leadership is, he was the one that he was a little bit more quiet, but he'll talk to you. But
right, right,
again, Joe was more in your face, talking trash in practice, and if you couldn't take it in practice, then he didn't think you need to play the game. It was exactly like Jordan. I mean, no different. I
yeah,
mean, and it's the best thing about it is when your best player has this mentality
right,
because everybody else falls in line.
yeah,
And every day was, he was pushing guys, fighting guys, head bumping. He pretty much called you on, if you wasn't doing things that you need to do on spot, he let you know.
right,
It didn't take coach to say a young player needed to run or die for the ball. He was gonna let them know right away.
right,
And he, like I said, he was in your face. That's how he was. Fortunately, that's how I was brought up. That's what I was used to. So
right,
I didn't really have no problem with it. But again, it made our practice intense. Every
right.
day was, to be honest, our practice when I first got to Amsterdam was so much harder than the game that when we got to the game, it was like cakewalk. It was like cakewalk.
And
We
you guys had
practiced so
Arik Shavek was your
yeah.
coach, right? Okay,
Art Javek was
okay,
our coach. Practice were intense. He was an intense coach. But again, we had player personnel. Like we had vets, we had young guys who they knew. Like the young guys knew that they had to run through a wall in
right.
order to get time on the court, and the old guys set the tone by making sure they went hard in practice so that the young guys had something to
It,
look to and be like, "This how I got to go if I want to play."
and you guys had one of the best runs in Dutch basketball history as far as like winning chips and also doing well in Europe. So I just had to throw
Yeah.
that out there because a lot of people I remember hearing about you guys uh, before I even got to Holland. So it's
Yeah,
interesting your story.
yeah. Again, we have a lot of talent, but I think what makes for best is when your best player lays it on the line every single day. If
Right,
you can get this, then you got lucky. I think because it doesn't happen like that. That your best player is so confrontational. That's why we got, that's why we came up with co-captains because
right,
what one personality don't have, the other have. Which
hmm
that kind of made me think of Draymond Green. Like he has a mentality more of a confrontational, where Steph Curry is more laid back. So when some confrontation is needed, Draymond can apply it.
right,
So they kind of like work hand in hand. And I think the best player to have for us like captain, you the perfect player would be a person who can do both, who can be confrontational, but also can tone it down.
right,
Can be can players like to talk to him too. Like he can go off the court and be just as good. So if you can get that, I think that would be perfect. I mean, and it's possible. It exists to where you got a player who can hold their own when needed and can chime down when needed. It's
right,
just again when we think of Steph Curry, we think he's more of the quiet guy. And again, like I said, you got the player like Draymond, who kind of off balances, who kind of sets the tone on the other side. If
right,
some confrontation is needed, somebody need to step to the young guys and be like, "Well, you need to go get the job done." Then that's probably gonna be Draymond. Well, Steph Curry might be like, "Man, look, you just gotta keep working, keep doing your thing." He might, the way he'll talk to him will be a little different. So
right.
I think both styles can be equally effective. It just depends on the personalities that's around it and whether that style can work for that team.
Right. Yeah, I thought this was an interesting topic as well. On teams that I've been like a major contributor on that have done well, like I'm more of like led by example. You know what I'm saying? Don't say much, just show up, do my work. Usually game plan, discipline, all that type. You know what you're gonna get. every night, basically for me. And but I feel like I played with a lot of great leaders in my time in Europe, and I remember, like, for example, Ross Beckering. I played with him. He was just the type of guy you mentioned that got along with everybody from all walks of life. If you know, he had a certain way of if something needed to be said, he would say it in a way that, you know, he I don't know how to explain it. Like, he just could just talk.
He had a way with
Yeah,
words.
he had a way with words, but he, you know, if he was trying to criticize or whatever, it wasn't no, you know, in your face type stuff like that. But it worked. You know what I mean? We had great success with him here, and then, you know, like, a guy like Lance reminds me of how you said Joe Sphinx was. Like, Lance, he won, like I said, 2 championships here, 2 MVPs, and Groningen is here, and he set the tone like that a lot of days in practice. Particularly, he had a few stretches where, you know, in practice and in games, he was on a real high level. But the rest of us, you know, followed suit. And on that team, we also had Chase Fielder, who was a great player, but he was, you know, more like quiet, lead by example, but just, you know, kind of laid back a little bit more too. And then you look at, like, guys, like, I see both styles work, because then I look, you know, Lance, and then, like, a guy like Brandon Curry. You know what I mean? Both great point guards. Both had really great success in their careers, but completely opposite types of styles. So I guess that's kind of what Kerr experienced with Jordan, Duncan, and Steph. So I do think it's interesting, you know. But again, the common denominator through all of it was, like, these were really good players first.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they were in that position to impact the game in a way to where they, you know, they were leaders. You know what I mean? So, and they had their own styles, but, you know, they all led to the same result, which I think is the most important. But yeah, I'm interested to see. I'm sure more stuff about Jordan's gonna come up in that new documentary on ESPN. It's supposed to be
Man,
coming out here.
I think everybody in the world waiting for that to come on.
Yeah, man, I can't wait for it to see that, bro. That's gonna
It's
be
like it's like Christmas to basketball players.
right, man. Cause especially with nothing on right now, I'm looking
It
forward.
didn't even matter if something was on, man.
Yeah,
If you hoop
fact,
and this was finna be on TV, you stopping all that. You
fact,
couldn't have stopped all that. Like,
fact.
today is the day. When it hit the TV, I want silence. I want complete silence.
Right. Go to the man cave, bro. You know what I
Right.
mean? That's one of the man. Don't bother me. Moving on to the third point. Which level of winning a chip, and I'm real interested to hear your views on this. Which level of winning a chip is, yeah, I use tougher, sweeter, whatever, you know, that means to you. Winning your first one, repeating, or trying to get the chip back. And, like, I think you were in a situation where you played multiple years in the league, and maybe want to elaborate on that a little bit.
The funnest one was the first one. That was the best one. Cause, like, you know, it's your first time winning. That was the first time you won. It was like my first professional championship, and like
Where
the
was that again?
unknown of that was in Amsterdam.
In Amsterdam. Okay.
That was in Amsterdam. My second season, I want to say. I think we won it. Maybe my third. I think the first season I got here, we lost to Groningen in the semifinals. Then I think that next year, I think we won it. But that was the best because of the unknown of how much it take, you know, what it takes to actually get there. That was the best
Right.
time we had. Now the toughest, when I think of the toughest, I would say the toughest is when you come off the loss and you got to get it back.
Yeah.
To me, that's the toughest. Because when you repeating, it's something after you win a title, your confidence is something about your confidence and the experience you went through.
Right.
Then if you bring in, like, most of the times the teams that I won it with that next year, they bring back all the same players. you bringing back your core. If you get most of those players back, it's just a way you walk, a way
Right.
you breathe. They say we finna walk over everybody. Like again, my second year when we won back to back in Amsterdam in 2-8, I think we won in 2-8, 2-9, or 2-7, 2-8.
Right.
The second year, like the first year we won, I think in 2-7, 2-8, we had a great season. We didn't lose many games. We played well in Europe, but that next year, we brought back the core. We got a couple of new guys too. Listen, like we didn't even feel like we could lose. Like we was just, again, the practices were high level. Everybody understood what it took. Everybody knew their role. But the new guys we brought in were vets. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't like everybody was fighting over
Right.
playing time.
Right.
Everybody just, we were 10 guys deep. It was just like we pretty much walked through the league. Like we felt like we weren't gonna lose. So I don't feel like that was that tough. I really feel like when you win it, then you lose it, then you gotta get it back. That's the toughest because now you in a kind of like a unfamiliar area, like because you lost it. You
You don't.
probably got
Right.
some new players now.
Right.
Now you probably changed a little bit more because again you on 1 year contract.
Yeah.
You didn't win it, so now like you got a lot more new players. You know, you might even got a new coach.
Right.
So the system might have changed. I feel like after you lose, then you try to get it back. That's the toughest.
You don't
I
know
mean,
if you can win it. You go back to
you,
not knowing. It's
yeah,
just
that
like, dang, I
confidence.
lost it. Yeah. You know what? It's funny because Kerr said the exact same thing in this. He said he thought the most fun was with the first one because they got the feeling, like you said, they hadn't won it yet, and that uncertainty of trying to attain something that you never won kind of drove them. That's the words he used. So it's funny you say that. He said he talked about clinching the Western Conference Finals in 2015. He said the journey was incredible. He's like, after the game they clinched to go to the finals the first time, like Steph and them have been in the finals. He's like just the pure joy that they were experiencing on that journey and ultimately winning was. He said that was by far the most fun. He does talk like the challenges of the journey. Like he says, he does say he believes you are better if you win it. Because if you remember that team that after they won in 2015, they came back in
Mm-hmm.
2016. They started 24-0 and won 73 games. So
That's that swag.
right. And I can relate to that because I felt I've been on teams where it's the same. Like the first year I got here, that was the team I've said before. Like the chemistry was instant, and that's the probably the only time I've ever experienced that in my career, where it didn't take any time to build that. That was like from day one, and we went 33-3, lost the cup, but we ended up winning the championship. And that journey was, man, it was fun. That whole ride, like you just felt, everybody had a swag. We was all young, most of us single. It was a good time in our lives. But Kerr talks about they ended up losing to Bron, by the way. So that in the Warriors that year they won 73. It's kind of a testament to his greatness because that team, Kerr thought that was one of the best teams out of the 5 years that they had. So. But he says, there are challenges that come with the journey after you've done it a couple of times. It's like it's not so, he mentions you lose the purity of the goal, and then sometimes egos come into play. And like we said, we mentioned what just came out in Ethan Strauss's book about some of the things KD felt was going on while he was in Golden State. But this happened after the first year because the first year they were together, everything was great. But then it kept going on. He mentions in there, him and Bill Simmons talk about KD was expecting to be anointed and recognized as the greatest player on earth, the best player in the game after he beat Bron. You know what I mean? But the narrative, a lot of people wasn't giving him that credit. because he joined the Warriors. You know what I mean? I understand both sides, but apparently, you know, he really felt, and Bill Simmons felt that like that played a role, and then it kind of came out. He said he felt the shift in the team the last year they won the chip when they beat Cleveland for the second time, but he felt it midway through there, and then the next year, that's when KD and Draymond had that fight, and it was when they were playing at the Clippers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he even mentioned, he said, you know, Draymond, like how you said, he mentioned you mentioned earlier, he needs confrontation. That's what fuels him. There's a lot of players that have been like that. I'm sure you know your fair share. But even Kerr was like, this time he went too far. You know what I mean? And it kind of just set the tone. And then everything mixed with injuries. He mentioned the media scrutiny that they were under. The media was trying to, like, you know, they saw something and they would just pull on the seams until it split. Like they could feel the rift in KD, and there was just constant coverage on that. Where is he gonna go? He's a free agent, and I just thought all that was interesting because I agree with you. I thought it was, or I don't agree with you actually. My toughest situation was trying to repeat after that first year in Groningen because of some of the things that like Kerr was talking about on part of the journey. Everybody on the team was. I don't think we had anybody on a contract for the next year, and you could feel like early on in the year, like that ball movement, that Christmas, that fluidity that we played with, that unselfishness. It was still there, but it wasn't there. You know what I mean? Does that make sense to you? And it ended up, you know, we won the cup and we lost Game 7 triple overtime to a really good Lighting team. They had Arvin at the time, Ross, uh, Seamus Boxley. They had some really good players, Monty McGee. So it was a good team, but I thought all that extra stuff kind of caught up to us. And that was part of the journey because we experienced so much success. Maybe guys feel like they should be getting this, or whatever. I don't know. And that kind of played a part in us. I think it just all came to a point, you know, at the worst possible time. So, and then getting one back is tough too, because I experienced that after winning that first one here. I didn't win another one for 3 years, and that was really hard to get that one back. You know what I mean? Because it's like you said, the confidence you had going into the second year was replaced by uncertainty. So, you know, and Kerr mentions that too. And then you also mentioned player movement. He mentioned the same thing, like the shelf life of dynasties. You lose, different guys coming back. You have to reestablish that chemistry all over again. And I thought that played a part in it too. So, but I'm with you. The first one was the funnest to me. But
First
defending
one
it,
was the best, man.
yeah,
It's just like when you held up that trophy. I didn't even drink at the time. I probably would have took a hit if they would have passed it to me though. Like that's I'm saying that's the feeling
yeah,
that you have.
yeah,
Then after, like I'm saying, you know, we both won a few titles in our overall course of our career, but after that, I ain't saying that it doesn't feel good to win after that, but you already experienced it, so
right,
it's kind of like now you know what to expect. You know, the ceremony,
yeah.
the celebration. So it ain't as I ain't gonna say it ain't as gratifying or satisfying. It's just that you a little you just let's say a half a meter down from how high you were from that first
Maybe the motivation is lacking. Not motivation, but it's like because you've done it, it's like it's kind of like anything else in life. You know what I mean? Maybe it's
one. Yeah, you accomplished
females
it.
or whatever whatever it may be. Once you do it once, then it's like okay, yeah, I experienced it now. You know, but it's tough to stay. That's why I thought repeating was tough because it's tough to stay focused. It's tough to keep that purity of the goal, like Steve Kerr said, and because a lot of things can get you distracted in that and getting away from the secret. But the secret is the reason why you got to that point in the first place. And yeah, I thought that was interesting. I also think uh, player movement overseas. You know, like you said, if you lose, good chance you having a whole new team. And he mentions like him and Bill Simmons talked about back in the day, like for example, the Lakers dynasty with Kareem and Magic, that lasted over like a decade. And then you
Yeah.
got to see the theater of it, like, okay, maybe they lost one year, but they come back next year. They're trying to get it back, and for fans, that's great to see. But they talked about, are we losing that with short term deals and things like that in the NBA? But I thought the most success that I've ever had, like extended success, came from when the core of the team stayed together for multiple years. And you came in the second year of that 3 year run we had, and I thought that team was a perfect example of that. Like we ran off three straight, but like for the most part, there was the same. Obviously, the like Chase, Lance left, and you came in, Brandon came in, but myself, Sean, we ended up with Thomas again. He for a couple years, and I think that's important to build a team. But I also think it is exciting for fans to see. Oh, they got knocked out last year, but they come back and let's see what they could do with that same core again. But we might be losing that, so we'll
I'm
see.
saying though, we talk about the shelf life of the players though, but I also feel like that go with the people who putting their names on the check too. I feel like the loyalty for bringing players back has changed too. Like
Oh yeah,
like meaning like teams are showing interest in other players. Like let's say you coming at the end of your contract as a free agent in the NBA or whatever. Like back in the day, they were trying to sign those players back prior to their contracts ending. They were like those players wanted to go back, but also those teams wanted to have them back. They weren't really like, yeah, we gonna wait around. We gonna wait till the season ends, shop around, see if we can. Like, let's say Jordan was becoming a free. I'm just giving an example. If Jordan was becoming a free agent at the same time as Barkley and Ewing, whatever, like the Bulls probably was like already like we keeping Jordan. Where now teams like we gonna wait and see if we what Barkley gonna do or what Durant. They want to see what the other major free agent players gonna do. Which saying to me that's also showing like you know the teams are not heavily loyal to the players too. Like they want to do something different. Like what have you done for me lately? If you
yeah.
didn't win that title, you know what I'm saying?
Well, that's the business we in though. Like even over here, that's how it works normally. Like
But I'm saying back in the day, it wasn't
no, I
like that
wasn't.
though.
Nah, nah.
They were
Right,
trying to keep their best players for
right.
longer periods of time. Where now it's like we gonna give you 2 to 3 years max, and if you haven't got us to either made us better significantly or won a title, then you go ahead. So I don't think it's all about the players. It's also about
The
the business
organization.
of it. It's just changed too.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. I mean, the
Well, yeah,
the, the amount of money these dudes are making in the league now on short term deals is like, you trying to get it, you trying to maximize your earning potential. So I get it, and they just playing the system as much as they can, like 2 year deal here and with the opt out or whatever. Like, because at the end of the day, at that level, like there's only a handful of guys that are the best in the world. You know what I mean? So they move the market, they control that, and like that's kind of how free agency has kind of changed the game. But it's like overseas, it's just it's kind of most times you're 1 year, year by
go.
year. Sometimes I was fortunate enough to sign a couple 2 year deals, but I've actually been fortunate enough to be able to stay in one place for 10 seasons.
Which is super rare.
Oh yeah, that's rare overseas, and like I feel really fortunate about that.
Yeah.
But I've also through that I've seen, like I said, uh, player movement, player turnover. It happens and it affects. Like we barely missed out on going to the finals in I think it was 2012, and then the next year the whole team was gone except me. You know what I mean? And we had like a new
Yeah,
coach and
that's
everything,
hats
but
off. That's hats off to the club too.
yeah, yeah, for sure,
For
for sure. I feel
being able to make to take notice of what you've done for them over the years and to keep you around. So that's kudos to Dona.
yeah, man. I feel like I said, I feel blessed to be in that situation, be in this situation for so long, and I mean, looking back on when we talking about some of these things, yeah, I feel fortunate to have had a career this long. So, but seeing everything that he talked about in this podcast, like I said, to wrap it up, it really hit home the whole aspect of the secret because it sounds so easy, but it really is so hard to.
OMG. See, but outsiders looking in, they'll never understand that. Like a fan, unless you played, I'm just saying, fans who didn't play, you see it on the court. When you see it at work, you just like you don't really understand the amount of work put into it to present it to the world. So I think from that aspect, only the players, the people who own those teams and put in that unbelievable amount of work in order to get to that type of success gonna really fully understand what it takes to build that kind of chemistry to win a title.
Right. And I couldn't agree with you more on that, but it's like it once you have it, it's so hard to build and it's so hard to keep.
Yeah.
Like once you have it, now you got to keep it if you keep that same team, and that's a challenge in itself. The daily grind coming in, like finding the motivation to try to keep it is like when you were chasing that first one, and some of the challenges that the guys at the highest level that you touched on, I was like, man, I couldn't even imagine. Like, we played in Donar, like, yeah, there's media and stuff around, like you gotta, but it ain't like that. Like 24 hours. All the news cycles, the talk shows, every move you're making, everything you tweet, everything you say, everything you do. I couldn't even imagine that. And then trying to keep the sanctity of the locker room as pure as possible. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, like I said, humans are humans. The ego is going to play a part. It's very hard for us to remove the ego. And that's not just basketball. That could be anything that you're doing with another group of people that you got to work with. Removing that ego is tough, and the ego has been the downfall of a lot of teams. From
and you need a bit of luck too. So,
for sure.
No injuries. Being healthy, and coming down the stretch of the season about time. So it's a tough thing to do to win a title.
Yeah, I agree, man.
On any level in any sport, I don't even care if it's a T-ball championship.
City League, it's tough.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to do. So
you gotta play together.
When you get to that point, when you play in those games, play it like it's your last, because it might be really your last. Seriously.
Yes, sir.
We fortunate enough to say we played in 7, 8, 9, 10, however many. We both fortunate enough to say that, but it ain't by numbers. We a very small percentage. Like very small, to be able to play in that many title games and win that many titles is to be honest, it's pretty much unheard of. You only got a handful of people around the world who are able to do that. So it's a blessing in disguise, but it also, again, it qualifies us to be able to talk about what it takes and how hard it is to get there. We've done it. And also though, but the people who tried to do it, who played 20 or 15 years or so and still didn't make it to a championship game. Yeah, so
that's tough, man. That would be tough. All right, Teddy, man. Let's wrap this up. Y'all be safe down there.
Yeah, you too, man.
Tell the fam I said what's up.
You too.
All right,
hey, man, little man done got a little. You know what I mean? Boy, growing.
He getting big, bro. He a little monster, man. All right, brother.
Later, man.
Yep.